Welcome back to part 5 of our design, and we'll just get straight into it. We might not get to the UCI quite in this episode, but this will be a short episode. I just want to completely tidy this up. There's a couple of loose ends, and I want to put to rest the speaker power situation once and for all for this design. Because again, I've gone over and thought about this a little more, done some more reading, and one of the things I realised when I was thinking about this and thinking of adding in the 15 and 18-inch drivers was this is a school, so it doesn't need to be concert level, massive, overpowering, can handle a rock band, the Foo Fighters coming in and doing concerts. It doesn't have to be that powerful, although we sort of could do that with this level of amplifier. These are very powerful systems that we're dealing with here, and not too expensive. I'm actually going to, in class, I have managed to obtain a pricing to do this system with all of the speakers and the amplifiers and the core, and it's not as expensive as I originally expected. So this will be an interesting exercise. And look, if we're talking about designing and getting into this, let's talk about the money as well. There's no problem with doing that. It's part of being a professional. So you'll have to do pricing and quotes for clients. So you might as well be beginning to get your head around the real numbers. I've alluded that this is a very expensive system. It is, but it's also high quality. So we're paying for what we're getting. This is a truism in the world that we understand, of course. So you'll notice I've only actually deleted the speakers I had assigned to delays, but I've kept these because I am using speakers exactly like this in some very big venues. So, and they work really well. They're clean, they're punchy, they're powerful, they're loud, and they're more than adequate for 500 seat rooms that I'm doing as a professional these days. So I'm going to stick with these speakers. They're going to be fine. I am going to add, though, if we go into our inventory back here, I'm going to add these loudspeakers, though, the E110s. Just why not? Well, this is actually a very good choice. So I'm going to add 6 of these, which is insane. 6, so we have 14 speakers now. We actually have enough power to run this many. So the reason that E110s are good is because they have 10-inch, whoops, that's speaker 11, not speaker 10, thank you. They do have a very low profile, so you can run these as infill on the front of the stage without disrupting your sight lines too much, pointing straight at your audience. And you can have them hanging halfway up a room to provide your delay reinforcement without them being things that people have to duck their heads under or that are heavy and a safety problem and can obstruct some seating view. So the smaller the better for that. So these are going to work. Now I'm adding 4 down here where the infill is because we have enough amplifier power to do that from these 2 channels. Look, I'm just going to, because, there we go, good. Because I'm explaining something. Look, I'm going to put these here. I can't attach them in the design, which is frustrating. But I could attach them in real life because these speakers physically have 2 NL4s on the back of them. NL4 connectors are those double prong or single prong double socket connectors that we've seen on power and a lot of things where you click it and turn it and it clicks in and it locks in place. It's speaker cabling, and it's a perfectly legitimate way of doing this. And because they have 2, when you plug one side into an amplifier, the other side automatically becomes a parallel output that you can then link this speaker in. So we could run 4 across the front of the stage, and as long as we can get into these amplifiers with our laptops, which we can via USB connection, and apply the correct power limiting and voicing to these speakers, these are going to operate perfectly. They're not going to get overpowered. They're not going to get thermaled. and they're going to cover our system beautifully. So I think we're good on the speakers. And now that we have them in place, we're just going to know that we're going to put a link between this speaker and this speaker and this speaker and this speaker. So we have 4 across the front. It's a very wide stage. Okay. A couple of other things I wanted to do. First of all was turn this to the right color. Thank you, because it wasn't. The other thing, I've made this into a stereo. I probably want this to not be a stereo. I want this to be a mono. Let me explain. Stereo limiter would have actually still provided all the protection that we wanted. Oops, I've got to delete it first. That's right. And may even have had a side benefit of, by sucking down both the sides of the infill, we could hear one side having a problem. That's fine. But if we were using them in 2 separate spaces, which I want this system to be able to do, we could have it at the back of the stage or at the back of the audience. We could run this wherever we wanted. We could run it over the top of the stage, which is actually probably the most likely second scenario for infill 1 and 2. Is infill 1 is on the bottom of the stage, infill 2 is up the top, what we call a center cluster. And I'd love to have the option to be able to do that. We might, who knows how we'd run that, but we could run that. But it's just more elegant to have a single peak limiter per channel if you're going to run them as separate channels with different EQs, etc., all that stuff, maybe even a different source. If these are 2 mono inputs, you could be running 2 completely separate programs on your infills, 1 and 2, depending on where you're placing them. So that's pretty good. So we've done that now. We've made them into peak limiters. We've sort of got the right color here. This isn't the right color. Why is that not the right color? Is it more that one? I suppose it's that one. Yes. And a couple of other things I want to do. I would like to be able to see the state of this router when I open up the design. That'd be great. I'm going to put these up there. It's maybe too small. That's just a visual representation of what's going on with 4 button states, showing where the inputs are going to what outputs. I think that's a good thing to have. Let's grab these and the custom controls and put them out and turn them into text fields. A, because it's nice to be able to see what's happening inside our design when we're in this page. But B, we're also setting ourselves up here to create a UCI. And our UCI is going to benefit from having access to these custom controls. Now you'll notice that when I pull it out of the custom control, it's a knob, and I'm turning it into a text field for this display. But if I grab that text field and drop it onto the UCI, that's still that control. So I can turn it back into a fader or a knob. You don't sort of limit yourself by changing its representation. It's still that control. So by having these out here, not only does our display look nicer, and we can see more information at a glance, which is helpful, because time is money, etc. It's also often if you get to go home in time or not. But I can grab these and now turn them into my faders on my UCI, for example, which would be a great thing to be able to do. The other thing I did want to add was over in the amplifier fields here, I was going to add the status of the amplifiers. So we had it. And from inside the status, I was going to grab the status, funnily enough, and shrink it down to the top of the amplifier. Maybe not quite that small. So more. All right, fine. I'll go with it. That there, good. And you know what? Let's just grab the ID. If you press the ID, that amplifier's front will flash. So if you're in your design and you're walking around the venue on a laptop, you could get the amplifier to flash. This is good if you're in a bank of amplifiers. You can actually identify which one it is that you are looking at the time. Not so important here, but it's good to know about, right? Okay, so also going to do that and call it temperature so that we can see that that's the temperature of the amplifier. Good, this is all going to come up down there, and we'll do the same thing with the other amplifier, just because we can. In this case, it also means we should. That's more the size I was after. You're going to think, why won't you? So do it this way. Still not quite doing what I want to do. How frustrating. Let's do that. Oh my lord. Here we go. Now we're getting somewhere-ish, maybe. There we go. Ah, good. That's more of what I'm looking for. Back to this LED. Fine. Let's put an ID on top of it so we can do that. And so we can tell if it's getting too hot. Which leads to a condition called thermaling. What thermaling we usually do to an amplifier is shut it down. Okay. I think that's good. Oops. Trying to get too clever here, maybe. All right. Good, good. Is there anything else that I want to see before we start our design? Oh, sub-level. Thank you. Because again, that will be the very thing we grab to create our sub-level fader on our UCI. And the selector buttons. Good idea. Let's grab the selector buttons. And put them out here so that we can see what they are. And also grab them. We need them for our design. So we can see the router situation. We can see the selector situation. We also are displaying that crossover point there. Oh yes, of course. I was going to create for you a group channel, wasn't I? Yes, let's do that. Channel group. Yes, let's do a channel group. This is going to be interesting. A channel group, I want a channel count to be 1, audio output count to be 1. This is an interesting little device, and I'm going to put it in here. Yes, that's actually exactly what I'm going to do. Call it MHT send 1. Okay, just bear with me. MHT send 2. Because we're in the background, it doesn't really matter what we call these as long as we know what it is. Okay, so let's add them here. Okay, I'm doing tags first before I do the channel group, just so we know where we are and it's all hooked up. Let's call this BFR send. Oops. TSC, send. TSL, send. And drum fill send. Done. And of course, they will end up here. The peak limiter, let's do that while we're here. Yes. This I'll send. Send. So left send. Drum fill send. Okay, now the channel group. Select all. I'm actually going to put in here a high path filter. And I'm going to connect that. So what it does is it will apply this to everything. All of the group, the whole group will have this high pass filter on it. I'm just going to emulate for a second. Well, let's emulate because then we can see what happens with the amplifier status, etc. And the frequency I can set to, I'm going to set it to 80. That'll just take all of the sub information, just not send it on to that peak limiter or that signal space. We don't need sub areas into a 10-inch driver. It's not going to do anything for us. So it's now on there, and that's going to work. Our entire monitor system is now doing that. You see the amplifier has now got display. The status amplifier is okay, and the temperature is 0 degrees. So we've got a few things showing now that we didn't have before. Fabulous. This is all very, very good. Let's stop emulating. Let's turn our channel group into our blue that we are using, which I think is here. Good. And I might just do a bit of this. Put that to be a lighter version of that blue, but that blue nevertheless. Perhaps that's a bit more like it. And I wanted to do that with that as well. Yeah, just have it look a bit nicer. I think that's covered everything that we wanted to do. Oh, we could also do the speaker status as well. And I think we need the actual status, but let's put the LED out next to the speakers, just so we've got everything that we could possibly want to have on our design. I like how, as I'm opening up the loudspeakers in series, it's placing them down. We've still got access to. It just seems really intelligent to me. Right, work within this software, the more I admire its elegance. Look at that, isn't it lovely? Do the E's have that? They do. I see. Let's do that then. Now I'm going to put these up. I'm not sure how these are going to operate in emulation mode without being attached to anything. I may get a not good status on those LEDs. Let us have a look. Let's emulate one more time. Sometimes these won't come up until you actually instance the, yes, so these are going to come up as missing. Yeah, it must be wired to an amplifier. Okay. But as I say, we would be able to fulfill that in the real world with just a link between these, a parallel link between these two speakers out of the second NL4 connection. Now, very quick explanation about that right at the end, because this is an interesting concept. When you start putting some parallel together, you actually are doing something to the impedance. Now, you don't necessarily halve it, although in some cases a parallel will actually halve the impedance, and that makes sense because if I've got a power rating going into here and it's hitting 8 ohms of impedance, not resistance, impedance, and giving you a certain volume. If I touch another speaker and want the same volume out of both speakers, if I halve the impedance, twice the power is going to go in. Does that make sense? In terms of the mathematics of it. So now if I had a third speaker, that doesn't quarter the impedance. It takes it to like 2/3 of the original impedance. So you can attach a number of speakers together before you cause it to not work properly. And there have been various online things about this. Up to 23 speakers can be run successfully from one channel of an amplifier, at least in test mode, until they start catching on fire, etc. So don't recommend it. And by the way, if you start, if a speaker if an amplifier is expecting an impedance load and it meets less load, it begins to output more power. Now, if you exceed the amplifier's circuit limits for that power, the amp is going to be what fails first, not the speaker. Although the speakers being hit with a lot of power can also fail. So adding a lot of speakers in parallel is not a great idea. You would be better off doing a speaker like they do with the quad boxes in the Marshall guitar cabinets, where you see 4 speakers. They are parallel and series connected, so the power gets evenly distributed. But you can't really do that with 2 NL4 connectors, is what I'm saying. So don't plug too many speakers in to an amplified channel, is all I'm trying to get across to you, which I think you've gotten. All right, great. I'm going to stop the video here, and then we will start our UCO next time, I absolutely promise. Thank you.